Viewers, welcome back to the show. We're talking with Tia Orton about this reconstruction where a fellow that the lawyers were representing sustained significant head injuries and there was no witnesses. So you've got a helmet to work with and other bits and pieces. But the key to this case was obviously the helmet. Before we get on to the testing you've done, assuming you didn't have a helmet, then what, Tia?
Well, there might be other evidence. Possibly his injuries would have been an indicator of what had happened. Perhaps we would have had to look at his clothing. Sometimes there's roadway marks. Perhaps we would have had broken glass or something like that. I'm not sure. But in this case, the helmet was really, really the key. And without that helmet, I don't know that
So that was your smoking gun?
That's right.
And the accident happened a few years ago. It was, I think, around 4 years ago that it happened. So unless you had the helmet, there'll be no glass, there'll be nothing else to work with.
Tia, you're testing. Tell us a bit about it.
Yes. Well, as the video shows, we essentially tried to replicate what we thought potentially could have happened in the impact. What we did is we took a truck, we accelerated the truck to a constant velocity, and we did that with several different velocities. I believe we started out with 30 kilometers per hour, 40 kilometers per hour. We escalated up to a certain speed. And we created a dummy that was representative of the height and weight of the cyclist who was impacted, and we represented the height that the cyclist would have been at while riding. We impacted the cyclist with the side rear view mirror of the side wing mirror of the truck. And really, it could have been any object that was protruding, but in this case, the mirror seemed logical. And essentially what the video shows is the dummy is projected forward after being impacted, and then it hits the ground in a manner that would be consistent with what we thought.
Don, that gives you the two impacts, back of the head
and back in, on the
front of the head.
That's right. Now, Tia, with the film that you had, with particularly the truck film, you actually got, I understand, you actually got Mr. B to sit on his bike to measure how high it would have been and done all those testing as well, because he still had his bike as well. That's the other thing as well, Tony.
Well, Don, for the evidence to be admissible,
that's right,
we've got to recreate the facts as best as we can. And so you've actually replicated everything about this particular plaintiff.
Well, you can never replicate everything in a test, but that's
yes.
right. You can do your best, and that's what we tried to do.
You had the weight, you had the height, you had all of that.
That's correct. And we did 10 tests just to make sure that we had consistency. And so instead of running one test, we ran actually 10 different tests.
And you were convinced that he was struck by a truck?
After running these tests, I absolutely am. I was of the opinion that it was consistent with that prior, but the tests confirm. And when you compared the helmet that we had in the incident, which we did have, to all of the test helmets, and it actually didn't end up making a big difference what speed we ran the test at, because the side mirror actually rebounds somewhat in each test. The helmets from the test and the helmet from the collision, you actually couldn't tell apart. They were almost identical.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And you also did some reconstruction on the driver's, potential driver, alleged driver's view, that he wouldn't have noticed that he hit someone with his side mirror.
That's right. So that's also another important thing, just to show different perspectives. And we did run a simulation where we ran a computer simulation showing what we thought was representative of this test at the exact speeds, with the exact weights and all that. And you could see the view of the driver. And yeah, he might not have noticed that he had hit a cyclist.
Don, assuming this evidence didn't go in, what's the prospects of this plaintiff actually winning this case?
Well, I think it makes it more difficult because, again, the onus is on the plaintiff to prove his case, his or her case. And without any evidence except for helmet, no witnesses, might be difficult for any trier of fact, be it a judge or jury, to accept it. So I think it's quite vital to have this extra evidence on top that just supports the allegations that there was a vehicle involved.
Without this evidence, you've really got no evidence about what happened.
I think the most compelling actually evidence was running the test replicating what the defendant had thought occurred, which was that this man just fell off his bike. And with that single impact, when we compared the helmet from the single impact to the helmet, it looked nothing, there was no similarity really at all. So that kind of disproved that scenario.
What other circumstances have you had where you've had to test something to draw conclusions about how something happened? Is there?
We try and use testing. If we cannot find other testing or other research that supports our opinion, we will always try and run a test if we can. We've done tests, a lot of rollover testing where we're trying to replicate the damage seen in rollover collisions. Like I said, we've done child seat cases where we try and replicate the damage that you see to a child seat. So it's almost like when you get a box in the mail and you know that box is crushed. You don't know if it fell off a truck.
Okay.
You don't know what happened to it, but you can use that to dismiss certain scenarios. I mean, anything's possible, really, and it's.
How do you explain yourself when you get all these sorts of tests and it involves velocity and physics and things like that?
Well, the great thing about physics and math, although some people find it complex, is that there are obvious laws. So we all have to obey the laws of physics.
Gravity.
That's right. There's really no getting around the laws of physics, and you can't make it do what you want it to do. So as long as you follow those laws, you really are.
But you do dumb it down, don't you? For
I
want of a better word.
Try to make it in simple language without using
We
too
try
much.
to explain it as simplistically as we can, just to make sure that everyone in the room understands what we're talking about.
Don,
Yep.
you want to bring Tia back for another episode, don't you? To
Yeah,
discuss.
I do. I'm quite interested in the black boxes in vehicles, Tia. I understand that most vehicles now have a black box. They can get all data such as speed, seatbelts worn. It's just endless data you can get, which is very, very, very interesting for us as transport accident lawyers, where there is allegations of speed, not wearing seatbelts. Now we get strong data there to say if it is or isn't. So
Well, it's
that'll
come
be
to that
another
time of the
episode.
show that we've got to sign off. Tia, I really want to thank you for coming on board. It's
Thank
been
you.
fantastic. Dom, as usual.
Thank you. Thanks,
And
Tia.
Thank
viewers,
you.
thanks for watching. Please stay tuned and also stay safe.